Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 162, titled A New Devils Era Upon Us? I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief, Nick Villano, streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. Yes, the Primetime Radio Network. PucksandPitchforks.com. Lots of articles coming out. Who will it be? Who will it be that the Devils will draft in this year's draft? I've got my pick already. And if Tom Fitzgerald doesn't do what I say, I'm going to have some beef with him. Unless, of course, I get the MSG Network's play-by-play position when I send in my demo, which probably will never reach to producer Roland at the network.
Listen, if they open up the play-by-play to the fan vote, I'll put my hat in the ring for that one too. I actually do have play-by-play experience. I've talked about that, but
yes, you do.
I don't think they're doing that, Sam. I think they've learned lessons.
Well, I'm hoping the reverse happens. They hire Matt Lachlan, and then that position's open. Then the Devils themselves for Devils Hockey Network. I'd do that too. I would totally do that.
Chico likes us. Maybe we can like work out a rotation.
No. Well, I know Chico likes everybody. He'll be like, Sammy, I like you, but I don't think it's gonna work, Sammy. But we can still have lunch together.
I feel like that's what he says about Mackenzie Blackwood sometimes. It's like, Sammy, I don't know about
Chico
this guy.
finds the positive in all of us.
No, he
be
can.
His partner.
Yeah, we love Chico.
You know?
And Chico would bring out the best of everybody. Chico, I mean, as long as Chico's there, the radio play-by-play is going to be elite.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's going to be exciting. But I do think, and that's the thing, I'll probably write something this weekend about the play-by-play position. Just kind of like looking at some people who could come out of nowhere and take that position. And I think that I think Matt Laughlin is my number one for the job right now. I'd have to look at like all of the options out there. There's a lot of them now
Don LaGreca.
He's going to be on the list. That's something that I will tell you. Don LaGreca will be one of the names on the list. But those are the only two I'm telling you. But I love Don LaGreca. I listen to the Michael Kay show probably twice a week. It's hard because I don't live in New York. Yeah, I love the Michael Kay show. I think that it's, as far as New York sports, when Mike fell off a little bit, I used to listen to Mike Francis all the time, but it got weird.
You know who's my dark horse that I want to win that position?
Who?
Leah Hextall. And I'm being serious when I say that. I should write about that. Because I'll tell you what.
I'm not with you on that.
I think
no.
Here's my reasoning on it. I'll make it real quick. I'm not going to make it all about that. I know a lot of people don't like her, but she's taken so much crap, and you're coming into New Jersey, New York market. She's got what it takes to withstand all that, because I've seen the crap that she took so far this year.
It's over.
She has
the top,
that ability to
the crap that she's taken, but I gotta say,
it bounces off of her. That's my
better.
reasoning. I'm sticking up for her, actually.
There are better female broadcasters, and we had one on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. But she can handle New Jersey and our fan base, our rabid fan base. Very critical fan base at times.
When you're replacing a legend, though, you can't replace it with somebody who struggled in her first year. But that's my only thing. I think Leah Hextall is she's one of the great hockey minds in this bit. She's very smart, which is why I was a little, I was a little downtrodden to see how she did this year. But it's her first year. And I say this with I know the people who the PA guy. I know everybody's mad at the PA guy too. I get it, but it is their first year. Like, people do need time to learn. Like, y'all go to your jobs every day and act
remember
like
Matt
you were
Lachlan on
freaking superstar.
on radio? Matt Lachlan
I
on
don't.
radio. That
I'll be honest.
first year, I'll tell you what Matt Lachlan was like. He was almost 2 seconds behind the play when he was making the call. 2 years later, I told him this. Every year he went by, he got better and better and better. And now with him and Chico, it just flows right now. It does take time. That's the point that I'm trying to make
Calling
with you.
hockey is hard.
You know,
It's incredibly
it is hard.
It is the hardest sport to do play-by-play. I've done play-by-play for 6 different sports, including gymnastics, which is weird. But there's nothing like live hockey games and calling it, especially for the radio. We're going to have our guest on in a couple minutes, Jack Dawkins. Love talking to him. He's coming on at 8:40. But before, I do think that the play-by, and it's weird because there's so much to talk about right now, and I have so many ideas about so many things, but I guess we do have to talk about the play-by-play. Steve Cangelosi came on this podcast during the pandemic and was so gracious with his time. And just, he's just a legend. And I know that Leah Hextall, is she the one that worked for the Lightning for a little while?
No, I think there's somebody else. Yeah.
I'm thinking of
Aaron Andrews?
No, it's another famous last name. That's why it's throwing me.
Kaylee Chelios.
Yeah, Kaylee Chelios. Yep. That's, because she spent a lot of time with us at my other job, and she was really gracious with her time, and she was really good with us last year when she was working with the Lightning. But I just think you need to pick somebody when it comes to the play-by-play. You got to pick somebody that the fan base is going to get behind. And there's just, I think that Leah Hextall is good where she's at because she can learn at ESPN and she can learn with that coverage. And she's somebody who's going to be much better next year. She's gotten better as the years gone on. Like that first game, I'll tell you, it was rough. And I think ever since then, people just expected to be that bad and then just kind of in their own head already made up their mind that it was what it was. But again, I think she's gotten better, and I think over the summer she'll get even better. So it doesn't matter. Moving on, I'm excited to talk about the draft with Jack. Jack is somebody who dives into these prospects. Do you know what he told me, Sam? And you're going to get him soon.
What?
He's got 6 acceptable players to take with second overall, and none of them are even Shane Wright. That's not even considering Shane Wright falling to 2 if Montreal goes off the board. 6! There are 6 acceptable second overall picks. So I'm going to ask him who's his favorite, what he's thinking.
Already
talk about
mine.
everything.
Mine.
Well, you like beef, so I know who you want.
Who do you think I want? Did we discuss this? Did I tell you? I'm all in. Should I tease it or no?
No, just say it.
I'm all in. Logan Cooley.
I knew you were going to say Logan Cooley because you're just going against the grain. You love the other side.
I have my reasoning. Okay. Jack
Why
Hughes,
do you want a skilled center?
Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, for starters, have not proven that they can last in a whole 82-game season yet. Not saying they won't. But Dawson Mercer belongs in the top 6, but you've got 2 spots already taken. You bring a two-way center, an elite two-way center, 1, 2, and 3. You put Logan Cooley down on the third line. It's not really down on the third line. That third line would have a superstar as a center when you need to shut down the other opponents, but also can be an offensive threat like Jordan Staal when the Pittsburgh Penguins drafted him over Jonathan Toews, but they won cups. And then there was great trade value when they traded him away. It's all about strategy and philosophy. I don't think it's about best available and best available for needs. But I think that would be a great pick that you can't go wrong with. I'm not saying
Yeah,
the others.
I don't think. Listen. Cooley's not a bad pick. Cooley's not it's. I think I have it at 4. Like I said, Jack has it at 6, but I have it at 4 that you can't miss. These 4 players, the 2 defensemen, Nemec and Jurisic, and then
They're
Cooley
hard to
and
pronounce. I'm taking the easy route on this
Slavkovsky.
one.
Yeah, thanks. But those 4 players, I really don't think there's a bad one among them. So I think, and it's funny because Slavkovsky is, he's somebody who's rocketed it up the draft boards. All the old draft boards that I'm looking at, like on Elite Prospects, have him in the 5 to 7 range. Now he's 2 with a bullet. But why don't you go get Jack, and we'll ask him what he thinks. Let's see what's going on with social media. Oh, you guys are buzzing. As long as they don't have a fan contest, I'm okay with any replacement. That's Doug talking about the play-by-play. Sam is way off today from Larry. Sam, he's just playing the other side, guys. He's playing the other side. We can make the playoffs. I missed that. Steve Tardis. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing, folks. We got to make the playoffs soon. We can't do this anymore where I'm coming on the podcast talking about draft picks. It's May. I should be talking about hockey. Talking about draft picks? You talking about draft picks? Yeah, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of talking about draft picks. I love learning about draft picks. I love studying draft picks. I love looking ahead to the NHL draft. Trust me, I do. But I hate that I just can't talk about a good season, a satisfying season. I want to talk about that year in 2018. Going into that year, that offseason was so satisfying. This year, another one where you're just kind of womp. But Sam's back.
I'm back. I can't wait to hear from our next guest because he's knowledgeable. He's a scout for Recruit Scouting. His name is Jack Dawkins. You can find him on Twitter at JD Says Too Much. Jack, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you, my friend?
How's it going, guys?
Jack, it's good to have you on again. You're busy saving the world half the time, so it's hard to get you on the podcast.
Yeah. That's been an adventure. I could do a whole episode on just that and the adventure that's been.
I'm sure, but I thank you for your work, and for those who don't know, Jack's been going back and forth with to Eastern Europe, just kind of helping out with the situation in Ukraine. So if you want to see what what's going on with him, make sure you follow him on Twitter. JD Says Too Much. But I do want to get into some hockey with you, Jack. So let's jump right into it because we have a lot to cover here. Let's talk about the draft. Draft is your specialty. It's your expertise. There's a lot going on. When we first talked today about what we were going to talk about, I brought up the draft, and you said you had 6 names that you thought were acceptable. So let's talk about it. What are the 6 names, and where are you leaning right now?
Well, so you've gone through the 4 obvious ones, which are Logan Cooley, Uri Slavkovsky, Simon Nemec, and David Jiricek. Those are the obvious 4. I still like Joakim Kamel quite a bit, and I think Brad Lambert could be the guy who comes out of this draft. You remember how if you look back, you remember 2017? Everybody looks back at 2017 and they're like, oh, why did the Devils take Elias Pettersson? It's like because Elias Pettersson wasn't in the conversation. It was Nico or Nolan, and that was it. Brad Lambert's going to be that version of that to come out of this draft. I'm almost certain. Like people are going to look back in 5, 6, 7 years and say, "Oh, why wasn't Lambert, a top 3 pick?"
So that and I'm with you. I think Lambert's going to be a top 5 player in this draft. But when I talked to Chris Peters last week, he told me that Lambert could fall out of the first round.
Wow. I don't see him falling out of the first round. I could see him falling out of the top 10, maybe. There's a lot of people who are really bullish on Savoy. A few people are pretty big on Denton Matejchuk. I like Marco Casper quite a bit. Marco Casper makes my top 10. There's the Russians in the conversation too. Danila Yurov could end up being one of the 5 best players to come out of this draft, but there's so little good footage on him from this season that it's really hard to make that determination on him. And then Frankie Nazar. Frankie Nazar is another name that I see tossed around in people's top 10s. I've heard Rutger McGrody's name kicked around. Cutter Gautier's name. Cutter Gauthier. I'm probably butchering that one because there's a couple different ways to pronounce that. But
you're on the right podcast to butcher names.
Around. Yeah, I've seen. Those are kind of the names that I've seen floating around the top 10, and a couple of the Swedes are getting in there. It depends on which one you think is the best. There's 3 really good Swedish forwards coming out, and it's a matter of if you like Osland or Ogren or Lekaramäki. I'm a Jonathan Lekaramäki guy of those 3 Swedes, but yeah, the top 10 has a lot of variation in it this year, and I mean, I got to be honest, I can kind of go with what Sam's saying on Logan Cooley. I think if Logan Cooley's there, I don't think you can leave him on the board. I think he's too talented of a player. I'd actually, if I was picking number 1, I'd want Cooley over Wright.
So you would go with Cooley at 2? Is that what you said?
The thing is like everybody's getting caught up on the fact that he plays center. And that's a perfectly viable thing to get caught up on. A couple of people are going to get caught up on his size. Slavkovsky at 6'4", 6'5" looks really, really good. And you look at Cooley, who's a smaller player, maybe not so much. But the big thing about him is you just watch his creativity with the puck. You watch his zone transition game that he's able to do. He's able to do things that the Devils really, really need help with in zone-to-zone transition, creativity and puck movement in the offensive zone. It would be almost like having a second Jack Hughes on the ice. That's not a bad thing.
No,
I'm all for it. I am all for it, Jack.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing with Cooley is that I am worried about the size. Just because the Devils were such a passive team last year when it came to zone transitions. When it came to zone entries for the other team. So I don't know the technical term for that off the top of my head, but the other team got into the zone easier than any other opponent. They just could not stop teams from getting into the zone. It was too easy for them to set up and run a play. Not saying that Slavkovsky is overly good at that. I do think that maybe the defenseman. Nemec has just always caught my eye. And as much as I really like Slavkovsky and Cooley, Nemec is the one that I'm just like, we just don't have a ton of right-handed defensemen. I know we have Severson and Hamilton. And, if you re-sign Severson, that's your 1-2 for the long term. But I don't hate the idea of going full throttle with a Luke Hughes, Simon Nemec pairing for the foreseeable future.
That's a perfectly reasonable take. Nemec is the closest to a sure thing you're going to see in this draft. He's going to be an NHL defender. Whether that's a top pairing, minute munching NHL defender or somebody who caps out as a second pairing guy, I can't tell you that yet. I'm not I'm not super confident that he's a top pairing guy, but I am super confident that if you draft him, you're getting a player who's going to make an impact on your blue line for the foreseeable future. Jiricek probably has the higher ceiling. If you're looking at defenders, Jiricek's got bigger size at 6'3". He's got fabulous puck movement skills. I was out on him early in the year, and I got brought back in by the scouts around me because early in the year I watched his defensive game and I was horrified. I couldn't believe this was a defenseman. But
not great.
As the year went on, he put together better in defensive footage, and he put together his defensive game, and he's playing at the IIHF Worlds right now, and he doesn't look out of place. The same way that Nemec and Slafkovsky don't look out of place, David Jiricek does not look out of place playing on that Czech blue line.
Yeah, what are World Championships like? What's the history like? I'll be honest, I didn't really start watching them until the Jack Hughes year, just to kind of get an idea of what he brought to the table, and he looked a little out of place at times. Obviously, there's that famous picture of Kakko kind of dragging him a little bit, but obviously it didn't bear much. What's your thoughts on like what can we? Because I know that the thing with Slafkovsky is that you're overrating Olympics, and there wasn't a lot of people there, and now you're seeing what he can do at the World Championships, and everybody's oohing and eyeing that he's, he could juke somebody out of their skates, but like how does that transcend to what they're actually worth in the draft?
So, World Championships is strange, but I often consider the average competition there to be about AHL level competition. The U.S. team that was sent this year, you look at it, it's a list of a lot of fringe NHL players and guys who are hoping to get a contract next year. If you look at the Canadian team, it's got some nice talent on it, but it's also got some, what the heck's that guy doing here on it? And then, the countries that really turn out are like Finland always shows up. Sweden usually brings, a good team. Switzerland is grabbing whichever Swiss NHL players get eliminated from the playoffs or don't make the playoffs. Like, I'll be kind of surprised if Yossi and Fiala don't show up there in the next few days, because that's just what they do. So, but you get games like today where the Slovaks played Switzerland today, and you watch Slafkovsky in that game, and he doesn't look out of place, and he's on the ice with Nico Hischier and Timo. You can't really you can't really discount it, but at the same time, it's the same thing as when a guy has a really, really impressive World Juniors. It's like, yeah, he's impressive, but it's one tournament. You got to look at the body of work. You got to look at their league play, and you really got to look at some of the scouting reports from the guys who don't just video scout them, guys who actually get to games and get to see these guys play. And you're taking a little bit of secondhand knowledge, but trying to get a sense of what these guys do off the puck, what their training regimen is like, what their coachability is like. That's going to give you a better sense of the player you're getting. And in Slafkovsky's case, he has spent time in a good development league. I think he was with TPS and their development program, but I might be wrong off the top of my head. But he's been a part of a good development program. There's no reason to believe that he's not going to be a successful NHL player.
Yeah, he was with TPS with his whole Liga career, or whatever it's called over there.
Yeah, I think he was in the under 20 league, and not for nothing, but that league's been churning out some great prospects. I mean, the silly answer for you on another reason I lean towards Kamel and Lambert is the top Finnish player taken in the draft each year turns out to be pretty good.
That's a fair
universally.
Assessment. It's not a terrible assessment.
If you take the best Finnish, if you go back the last few years and you took the bet and you were on the board and you took the best Finnish player off the board as your pick, you would not be unhappy with the team that you had.
So let's shift gears a little bit, because we're still talking about the pick, but I kind of want to talk about NHL players and upgrading with NHL players right now. Tom Fitzgerald has made it clear that, first of all, he made it clear before they won the lottery or whatever, they got the second pick in the lottery, that the pick was available. This is when he thought it was going to be 5-6 range. He said the pick is available in the right deal. And there's a lot of talk about Kevin Fiala. I don't think you could trade second overall for Kevin Fiala. That just doesn't seem like the smart move. But where are you looking as far as the NHL players that you think are theoretically available that the Devils could get with this second overall pick that you'd be happy with?
So I got a couple of obvious ones. Timo Meier, I think, is an obvious one. You look at Kevin Fiala and you say maybe he's not worth the second. Timo Meier was a point per game player this year. He's been, on an upward trend, and San Jose wants to avoid going into like a full rebuild mode, but they're going to have a hard time paying Meier. So maybe, when you pick second overall, if you're picking a forward, you hope you get somebody who's as good as Timo Meier. And that's kind of my answer for all the players that I would say that I would take for the second overall pick. It's like, okay, when I pick second overall, what kind of player do I hope I'm getting? And Timo Meier's that kind of player. I see people throwing Matthew Tkachuk's name around. Frankly, I don't think that's happening.
Because the Flames aren't willing to do it, or because the Devils aren't willing to pay that money?
Flames aren't willing to do it. I think they've got to try to find some way to keep Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, really, can they really let him go? I don't see it. They gotta find a way to keep him.
But then you probably lose Gaudreau, right?
Yeah, or Johnny's made some money. Maybe they convince him to take a team friendly if he wants to stick around. I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to pay him his open market value.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if a police negotiator will be able to talk him down from his price.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. But, I mean, if they're going to trade Matthew Tkachuk, they're not going to get a better offer than the second overall pick. But and he's definitely a kind of player that I could see the Devils needing, using, being happy with, Devils fans being happy with. I've got a couple of silly left field options, and it's probably not a 1-for-1 on some of these guys. Like, Toronto could do, if Toronto decides to break up the band a bit and they're going to part with Nylander, like, they can give me a package that includes Nylander. That would make me happy for the second overall. St. Louis is going to have to make a decision about Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. I would take one of them along with maybe Binnington's contract and something else to make me move from second overall. I think I get enough there. It depends on what Boston does with Bergeron. Does Bergeron retire? Does Bergeron come back? If Bergeron's on the move, and they're breaking up that line, see what Boston wants to do with Pasternak.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah, I floated that, but I don't know how realistic that one is either, just because that's like found money for them, but still.
Yeah, but at the same time, if Bergeron's if Bergeron's done, or if Bergeron moves on somewhere else, and you don't have a center for that line anymore, you might as well. I mean, how unhappy can you be with a second overall pick? And then the kind of left field one that I've got that I don't think anybody's thinking about is, do you remember there was talk about Chicago blowing everything up, and like they were going to move Alex DeBrincat?
Yeah, I had him on my list. So he's definitely somebody that I'm still kind of circle back to.
Yeah, no, I would. He's one that's a deal I actually think could happen if Chicago decides that they're going to tear it down. They don't have a first round pick. DeBrincat was a second round pick when they picked him. So I mean, they can't be too unhappy in that value increase. And I mean, can you imagine adding Alex DeBrincat to? Granted, it would be a small line. Don't get me wrong, but can you imagine adding Alex DeBrincat on the ice with like Hughes and Bratt?
Yeah, I mean that sounds insane.
It does. It sounds absolutely insane. And he's kind of the again. You know, you say, if I draft second overall, what type of player am I hoping to get? I think DeBrincat is one of those answers. I think if you get DeBrincat, I mean, you see if Chicago will give you more than just DeBrincat, but I think if you get Alex DeBrincat for the second overall pick, you're happy.
Yeah. I mean, I would be happy. You know, I would be happy if you end up with Alex DeBrincat after that. That's a proven finisher, which is they desperately need, and you don't know if you're getting out of Alexander Holtz right now. There's a lot to love about that prospect. Now I really want to really pivot because they're this team, it doesn't matter what they do if they don't get a goalie. I like Mackenzie Blackwood as an option, but he can't be the only option. That's just not a possibility. So in your mind, what can the Devils do about the goaltender position to make you confident it doesn't tank the season next year?
So the funny part is it's not too huge of a pivot from the first overall discussion or the second overall discussion, because let's say, you decide, all right, we want to do the second overall pick and we want to get Timo Meier, but maybe we can hash out some more with that. See if San Jose is willing to part with James Reimer. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, Reimer's 34, but like he's got some hockey left. And wouldn't it just be the best thing ever if the Devils acquire James Reimer and then somehow, they play and they make the playoffs and they're against Toronto in the first round with a tandem of James Reimer and Jonathan Bernier?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if I'm going. I don't know if I could trust Bernier at all. I looked at what his buyout isn't that bad. I don't remember what the rules are with a buyout on an injury, but we've done the hip before, and it's just not. It hasn't worked out ever for us, so I just don't want to take that risk again.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't think. I mean, it's more. The Reimer Bernier comment is more the joke because that was Toronto's goaltending tandem in 2013.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah.
That's more what that is. No, I don't think you can count on Bernier coming back at all. If he does and he can play, awesome, found money. And you don't really care about his contract because you have the salary cap space. You can just bury it. Or, I mean, hell, if he's not going to play for the season, you throw his contract on LTIR and trade it to Tampa for a second-round pick. They need it.
There you go.
Or trade it to Vegas. Like, it doesn't hurt you at all with, teams buying dead contracts. I think St. Louis is an interesting target on the goaltender front. I mean, people are talking about, Billy Husso. But I mean, for St. Louis, that Binnington contract doesn't look very good. But for the Devils, you're like, yes, I just watched John Gillies and Hammond. And I watched Dawes struggle but do his best, and I don't know what kind of shape Blackwood's going to be in. And yeah, I'll take Jordan Binnington, whatever.
Here's the thing. I'm going to say
might...
something about Billy Husso real quick. That I didn't mean to cut you off, but I got to get this out because everybody keeps bringing up Billy frickin' Husso. This guy has one good year, right? I get that he was a prospect for them for a long time, but he was a prospect for a long time. And now people want to open the checkbook for this guy. Like, he might make north of 5. I would rather give that to Jack Campbell. I've seen at least a couple years of Jack Campbell. I know Jack Campbell's a little bit older, and he's kind of in the same situation where he was a late bloomer. But I saw what Jack Campbell did in the Lightning series. He had stretches this year where he was really, really good. I understand he had stretches where he was kind of in between too. But I think that I'm more confident that Jack Campbell could come in and be a 1A, 1B type and really work with, if you're doing this with Mackenzie Blackwood, can work with Blackwood and they can feed off each other over somebody like Husso. I just don't, we saw what happened. Like, just look at St. Louis themselves. They got stuck paying for Jordan Binghamton. And right now, I'm sure they're happy with Binghamton right this second because he's playing well in the playoffs. But he's a train wreck half the time. So that shows you what you'd get for paying for 1 year of performance. I need more of a sure thing in net.
Right. And that's where, I say, if St. Louis is willing to say, Husso is good for us. We're ready to move on from Binnington. And because we need the salary space, we're willing to get rid of this $6 million contract cheap. If Binnington, for some weird reason, is coming cheap, I'll take it. The money doesn't bother me as much as the assets to acquire. If Vegas hadn't fired DeBoer, I would say that Robin Leonard's a possible option. That doesn't look like the case anymore.
You don't think so? I still think it's out there.
I
don't think they're set in net.
Yeah.
And Logan Thompson looks really good at World Championships. So.
Yeah. Yes, he has. Another option that maybe people you might think is a silly option, but if you decide that Blackwood is too inconsistent for you, and you just want NHL average goaltending, which is what we've been begging for, is just NHL average. Mikko Koskinen's a free agent. I know he doesn't have the greatest reputation coming out of Edmonton, but if you look at his actual numbers, considering some of the defensive squad he's had to play behind, Koskinen hasn't been bad. And again, it's not the most inspiring option, but you might end up scraping the bottom of the barrel here just hoping to get mid-range. I mean, you can see if Comrie ends up a free agent and go with that again. That would be funny.
I'm not there with you, Jack. I'm not there with you.
What, you didn't like New Jersey Devils legend Eric Comrie?
Hey, he had one real good performance, didn't he? He did that one real good thing that one time.
Yeah, he had one game.
Listen, I've said that if Scott Wedgwood would come back, that's an interesting option, although I think somebody's going to give him a proper backup job, and I don't want him to be the main backup. But if he would come back to do the same role that he did this year to start the season, I wouldn't hate that experience. But let's before I let you go, I do have to ask, because a lot of people are curious, and a lot of people don't really know what's going on. What do you think they're going to do with Lindy Ruff? What do you think they're going to do with the head coach?
Well, I mean, I'm one of the people that doesn't think Ruff should have been fired because he's done what you wanted him to do. He's gotten more out of Jesper Bratt. Nico statistically had the best season he's had. Jack Hughes hit another level. Ruff has helped develop your young players. That's what he does as a coach. He helps develop young players. Yes, the power play was atrocious. Yes, Nasruddin's contract was up, and maybe it was time for him to go. But from an individual growth standpoint, I wouldn't call this season a failure. You look at how Jack's game grew. Dawson Mercer. You look at the improvement in Damon Severson's game over the last couple of seasons. You look at Jonas Siegenthaler. I mean, you remember when Jonas Siegenthaler was a throwaway from the Washington Capitals for a third-round pick, and now he's probably our top pairing left-handed defender. Like it's so hard for me to look at the individual success of the young players on the team this season and say, "Oh, that coach deserves to be fired." I think if you talk to some Rangers fans and you look at how Gerard Gallant has handled the young players on the Rangers franchise, they would tell you that it's been disastrous for their younger players. And I know a lot of Devils fans wanted him. You look at what Peter Laviolette has done with Washington, how he's led them to the same 2 first-round exits that his predecessor Todd Reirden led them to, and how he's not quite given the ice time that he should have to guys like Connor McMichael. I think if you look around at the other coaches that we could have had, I think fans need to ease off on Ruff a little bit. But at the same time, you look at some of the names that are floating around out there that are available, and you start to wonder, okay, these guys are available now, but who's going to be available next year or the year after when I'm ready to move on from Ruff? And what's the difference between me moving on now or me moving on?
Here's the thing with that. This is my only counter argument, because I think you made a lot of really good points, and I don't hate the idea of keeping Ruff. I think they did the things that I needed them to do, which was to reshuffle the assistants and bring in just new philosophies on power play and penalty kill. The penalty kill did a lot of good things, but I think that was a matter of personnel rather than philosophy, because it just seemed like it was the same penalty kill that it was when it was one of the worst in the history of the league last or 2 years ago, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to fire him because I don't think there's a ton of better options than Ruff, but I think there are better options than Ruff. Obviously, Gronberg is somebody who's come up a lot. I think that he would be an interesting voice. I love the idea of Barry Trotz, obviously, but I don't think we're very high on his list. I love the idea of, Sheldon Keefe was like my number one, but Toronto announced this week that they're keeping him. So it makes sense on paper. I do think that Toronto is going to go for broke this summer, but coaching didn't seem to be the reason why they were in the situation that they were in. And there's a couple of other interesting options. I think I wasn't one who wanted to just replace him with Dineen because of what Dineen did. I thought Dineen had a good season, but I think he's better served to be in the AHL for now. My idea is that you could have put Ruff in the front office, so you still get the development. He's still there to teach these guys, and he could go down to the ice ever so often. And you bring in a superstar guy. But you're not doing it to bring in the next hot AHL coach. You're not doing it to bring in the next hot assistant. You're doing it because, and I know we joke all the time about the NHL retreads and what that turns into, but I feel like if you're the Devils right now, that's the only option you have if you're not keeping Ruff. If you're going to take a risk on somebody, you might as well just risk it with Ruff, who's proven that he can develop these guys, like you said. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know where Sam's at. Sam's at keep Ruff at all costs. He will die for Ruff. Not only will you die in the Ruff hill, you will die with Ruff on the hill.
Just for one season. I'm capping at 1 season. And Jack, by the way, you have a new best friend because everything you've said tonight, I've been saying all along, and I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I really like it. Just with Russ, if you look at his track record of young players he's developed and what they've gone on to become, it's really hard to sit there and say, oh, I want him gone. Like there's a couple of options that are kicking around that I would pick up the phone and give a call to. I'm waiting to see what San Jose does when they get a new GM in. If the new GM in San Jose decides that he wants his own coaching staff and they fire the assistants there, the Devils should probably bring John Madden on as an assistant and let him be an assistant under Ruff for a year, and then maybe pass the reins over to Madden. That would make the fans happy, but you'd also be hiring a good young up and coming coach who's had success in the AHL.
Yeah, and another name that in kind of in that same scope, but now he's in college, is Jay Pandolfo. Jay Pandolfo has been an up and coming assistant for a while with Boston, and I thought he was eventually going to come back, but now I can't remember the college he just signed on to be the head coach for, but he's somebody that is definitely somebody to keep an eye on because you never know.
Everybody's favorite whipping boy from a few years ago, Ben Lovejoy, is a college coach too. I think he's coaching New Hampshire, I want to say.
Okay. He's somebody I want to get on the podcast, Sam, because he's doing this charity event. Trying to see if I can get him on to talk, and then we'll talk about coaching. We'll see what's going on. But Jack,
Benny's awesome. Benny's one of my favorite hockey people ever to talk to is Ben Lovejoy.
He's one of the guys that turned around his reputation here in New Jersey, unlike anybody I've ever seen. From going from a guy who was overwhelmed on the top line to a guy who was beloved by the entire fan base. Love Ben Lovejoy. It was sad to see him go. I thought he still had something left in the tank when he left the game, but you leave the game for the reasons you leave the game, and that's that. Jack, that's all I got for you. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find your stuff, where they can find you on the socials, and where they can find your work.
Yeah, you guys mentioned my Twitter profile earlier. I was going to be putting out draft content with Recruit Scouting, and I'm still going to do that. I'm still going to do some draft profiles. I got a lot of footage to catch up on though, because like you said, I've been in and out of Eastern Europe a lot over the last few months, so I'm behind on my scouting. There'll probably be a bunch of tweets about that, and then scout profiles and player profiles on Recruit Scouting. That's about it for right now.
Cool. Check him out at Recruit Scouting. Jack Dawkins, one of our favorites. Yeah, we'll definitely have you on again over the summer, and we'll see kind of where the Devils go with some of these draft picks. And we'll talk to you again soon, bud.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure.
That is Jack Dawkins, scout for Recruit Scouting. You can find him on Twitter at JD Says Too Much. I don't think he says too much at all. I agree with his Twitter account should be like JD Says the Right Things, like me.
I could see the text message that's coming my way later. You should get more people like that. You should get more people who agree with me. I think that would make the podcast better. If you just get more people who say what Sam says. That's what's going to happen.
Well, I think I was out of bounds, and it's a full moon tonight, I believe. With the Leah Hextall thing, but it's in all seriousness. The Cooley, I agree with him a lot, but the other guys is pretty interesting. Making the comparisons to the 2017 draft. Could there be another Cale Makar? In the top 5.
That's
could
what I'm
come about.
That's why I'm thinking defense. That's where I'm leaning right now. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not 100% on there, but I'm leaning towards it. I'll have mock drafts coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'll have a separate article just on my specific second overall pick. I got an article coming out tomorrow, Sam. I guess we're already on plugs, so I'm doing the plug. We hit on everything in the interview, so we don't have to rehash nothing. We're good, right? Do you have any thoughts before we go to plugs?
It's interesting that you talked about defense, drafting defense in this draft, and what that may look like in 2025.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting because I was looking at Logan Cooley more on the defensive side than the offensive side, being on that third line. And when you talked about Luke Hughes and whoever would be paired up with him, with defense, there's 3 pairings. Sometimes you carry 7 defensemen.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine a decade, or let's say, not maybe that's too long, maybe 8 years, 6 to 8 years of Dougie Hamilton, Ryan Graves, big guys that have very good upside. Not assuming that Damon Severson's not on the team, who knows, because he's going to command a lot of money. But you got Luke Hughes. If the Devils draft defense, if Mohamedoulan becomes the guy that we think, or at least Tom Fitzgerald thinks he could be, with that big defense, and then you sprinkle in all the Ahoytuk, Riley Walsh, Kevin Ball, for the next 5 to 7 years, you have all this young talent, and they develop. That could be a pretty potent two-way defense. They can kill you offensively, and they can also kill you in the defensive zone if they had the right teacher, if they had the right coach. I don't think Lindy Ruff's the right coach, but could they get an assistant that could fix that?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that you saw what Lindy Ruff does with defense when he was with the Rangers, and it's not his forte. It's just not.
Yeah.
His system will bring the best out of certain defensemen. I think he was really good for PK Subban. I think he will be really good for Dougie Hamilton. I think it really does work for him, and we saw it work at times. I've written profiles on his pairing with Ryan Graves and how much that worked for a while, but I do think that he needs somebody to focus on the defensive side of things. And I guess Jonas Siegenthaler is kind of like the thing that works against that because he did so well.
Yeah. And you need those type of players because, we talk about like some of the scouting, all that, but also, there are role players. I believe the Devils are one Butch Goring trade away from turning this whole thing around. Yeah. Not so much in the stats.
That's a good example.
It's just somebody that can make everybody better in the locker room. Somebody that can fire them up. Somebody that will have their back. And then it becomes a very infectious, contagious mindset where they play as a whole as a team. And there is no right or wrong answer about this second overall pick. I like that article about Matthew Tkachuk, but I just don't think it's going to happen. But I like these ideas, but it could be very interesting what the Devils do, and just realize this pipeline is not realized till 3 years from now. Whoever they pick in the second overall may not be playing in the first 2 years afterwards. They could be playing either in college or major juniors or wherever, and but at the same time, and I don't want to the other guy that 6'4", 200 something pounds, you also can't teach size either, so he would also be a great pick. But just in my feeling, they're going to mirror what the Pittsburgh Penguins did back in the 2000s, where they basically tanked it and rebuilt it from the draft, and it was Ray Shero and Tom Fitzgerald, a little bit of Craig Patrick. I think that's where the Devils are going to go. And if you remember Malkin, Crosby, and Jordan Staal, people were questioning why Jordan. You already got enough centermen. Well, it worked out for Pittsburgh, and then they got value out of them.
Yeah, it definitely did. Like you saw, like you said, with the Stalls, with Jordan Staal, with other players like that have really worked out for other teams. You do get to a point where you kind of have to figure out how to pay them all. How do you pay Dawson Mercer, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Cooley? When you have 4 players who are similar in size and game and mirror each other a little bit. And the good news is if Jack Hughes goes down for 4 weeks and Cooley develops into what we think he can be, he just slots in real quick and you're in good shape.
Yeah.
And I think the same could go for Mercer taking on Nico Hischier's spot. If they're wingers, you saw that with a little bit with Blake Coleman. And I think that's the future for Dawson Mercer is you want to build him like Blake Coleman. And I know Blake Coleman was such an interesting case and such a different kind of case because he was a 3rd-round pick, took a long time to develop, spend his entire college career in college, and it took, what was he, 26 when he finally became an NHL regular, right?
Yeah.
Something like
late
that.
bloomer.
So he's a different case a little bit, but I still think his type of game is what you want out of Dawson Mercer, and I think that's huge. It's probably something I'm actually going to write about. Speaking of writing, I got a piece coming out tomorrow. Interesting piece. I'm talking about Slafkovsky, and if you get him, does that change how you feel about Alexander Holtz? And is Alexander Holtz now the one who's expendable if you get Slafkovsky? Does that change how it's going to is that going to change your thought process? If somebody comes to you and asks for the 2nd overall pick and you say no, would you pivot to Holtz then? Because Holtz was previously considered untouchable. That's another piece that I wrote this week about which prospects are actually untouchable. So kind of ties into that, but a little bit more in depth on those 2 players specifically. So that's going to be out tomorrow
It's going to
morning.
be so interesting because I'm telling you, the Devils have so much draft capital, prospect capital right now, and trades can be made in the future, whether the team is bad or the team is really good. The amount of value that they can have, it's amazing what you can do when you have a pipeline. And the last year and a half, that pipeline really is almost full of just talent. And it's going to happen, this draft. My thinking is when is enough, and when, the winning needs to start at some point. And I think that's going to come with really no more than the team ages a year or 2, and you get to see the frames and their bodies, some of these players, start to fill in and can play the 82 games, and Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier did not have the benefit of developing in the AHL, spending time down there. They were right in the fire, and Lindy Ruff has gotten them. You couldn't ask for a better scenario where those 2 are at right now, because the John Hines thing didn't really work out, but I think it's good.
Yeah, I mean, John Hines definitely helped Hischier in that first year, in that rookie year, put him in a position, gave him the opportunity to play with Taylor Hall. So he did help him in that way, but in terms of development, I think that Hischier's in the best spot he's been in his career. Obviously, Hughes is in the same spot. So it's interesting. We got time. We got time to figure it out, Sam. But I don't want to not be in the playoffs next year. Or, I'm not even going to accept close anymore, Sam, because this was the year to be close and not make it. Next year, you gotta be in that top 4. I don't know who you're knocking out because every year it seems to be the same 4, except
Hey, to break it to you, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen unless they make a change in philosophy. I think they're going to keep on drafting, and again, it's going to be around 2023, 24, where it's gonna.
But
I don't think it's gonna be next year.
You can still draft Slafkowski, and you can trade for if you draft Slafkowski, sign Jack Campbell, and trade for Vladimir Tarasenko.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say this isn't a playoff team.
Yeah.
But that's that. That's all I got, Sam.
That's it? Are you plugging? You're supposed to plug.
I did the plug.
Or you already did? Oh, okay.
I did the plug.
All right. Well, I want to thank all those tuning in. Art Heaton, Brendan Warner, Ramona, everybody. And want to thank Jack Dawkins for not only coming on this podcast, but somebody that I agree with. It's great. It's great. Doesn't happen too often. Also, congratulations to Steve Cangelosi. I know he's stepping down, but what a heck of a ride. Class act, all class, all the time. Steve Cangelosi, he's definitely made a name for himself in Devils fandom. And I'm going to still figure a way how to get my resume in. My demos in. I just want them to look at it. I want them to even laugh at it. At least I said that I did that.
Yeah, there you go. I got
very good.
I just want to be. What was the Hamilton saying? Just I want to be in the room where it happens.
Oh, what? I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't. I want to be in the room where it happens. You never seen Hamilton? Anyway, whatever. Just end the podcast. We're at the singing portion, and nobody needs to hear that.
All right. Till next time, let's go Devils.